This is what happens when a 7-time world champion endures the worst season of his career and refuses to stay quiet about it. Lewis Hamilton just delivered one of the most defiant statements in recent Formula One history, telling his critics they're not even on his level. Ralf Schumacher's response acknowledged that Hamilton was technically correct, but the former driver added that a little more self-reflection would do him good. Both men believe they're right, and the strangest part is that they might both be correct. What you're about to hear could change how you view Hamilton's legacy and his future at Ferrari. Abu Dhabi, December 7, 2025. Lewis Hamilton had just crossed the finish line in what became his final race of a season he'd rather forget entirely. His Ferrari started 8th on the grid after yet another qualifying disaster. And while he recovered positions during the race, the damage to his reputation had been building for months. Journalists informed him about the growing chorus of criticism from former drivers, particularly Ralf Schumacher's suggestion that he should let go of his seat, and Nico Rosberg's claim that his struggles were damaging his legacy. Hamilton's response left no room for interpretation, as he told them he wouldn't say anything to his critics because none of them had done what he'd done, and that they weren't even on his level. That statement split the Formula One community straight down the middle. Some called it arrogance from a driver who'd just finished his worst season ever, while others called it the confidence of a champion who understood exactly what he'd achieved. Understanding why this moment matters so much requires looking at what actually happened throughout 2025. Hamilton arrived at Ferrari as the most decorated driver in Formula One history, carrying 7 world championships, 105 race wins, and 104 pole positions into Maranello. Every single one of those statistics represented a record. The partnership between Formula, 156 points. That's all Hamilton managed to score across his first Ferrari season, which placed him 6th in the World Championship. His teammate, Charles Leclerc, accumulated 242 points on his way to 5th place, and that 86-point gap between them tells only part of the story. 0 Grand Prix podiums arrived for Hamilton all year, with his only trip to the top 3 coming during the China sprint race back in April. For context, this marked his first podiumless season since 2007, his rookie year, which means 18 years had passed since Hamilton last experienced this kind of failure. Qualifying battles went 19-5 in Leclerc's favor, with an average gap of around 0.135 seconds separating them, which doesn't sound like much until you understand that in Formula One terms, that gap represents an eternity. Race results painted an even bleaker picture, with Leclerc beating Hamilton 18 times compared to just 3 victories for the 7-time champion. The season reached its lowest point across the final 3 races. Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi all saw Hamilton eliminated in the first round of qualifying, making him the first full-time Ferrari driver in the team's history to achieve this unwanted record. The season finale began from 16th place on the grid before he recovered to 8th. Ferrari's overall performance collapsed right alongside Hamilton's struggles. The team dropped from 2nd place in the 2024 Constructors' Championship all the way down to 4th in 2005, finishing 435 points behind champions McLaren. Development on the SF25 stopped back in April when the Scuderia chose to focus entirely on the 2026 regulations, which essentially abandoned both drivers to 8 frustrating months of racing an outdated car. And that's when Hamilton told his critics they weren't on his level, doing so from the weakest position of his entire career. January 9, 2026 brought Ralf Schumacher's calculated response through Sport 1. The former Williams and Toyota driver acknowledged Hamilton's point while simultaneously undermining it, stating that he found Hamilton's comment interesting because only people who had never achieved as much seemed to criticize him. Schumacher admitted that Hamilton was basically right, but then added that a little more self-reflection would still benefit the 7-time champion. The rhetoric worked on multiple levels at once. Schumacher gave Hamilton his due while questioning whether past achievements made anyone immune to legitimate criticism. His vindication came from predictions he'd made before the season even started, when he told people that Hamilton wouldn't compete for the World Championship and would need time to match Leclerc's pace. Critics attacked him for those predictions at the time, and what happened throughout 2025 proved him exactly right. Schumacher had been Hamilton's most persistent critic all season long. His harshest assessment came when he called for Hamilton to step aside for Ferrari's benefit, arguing that Hamilton needed to let go and allow the team to sign a second strong young driver alongside Leclerc. His reasoning centered on Ferrari's championship ambitions, because the team couldn't afford to fight for the title with only one competitive car. Without that change, Schumacher warned Ferrari faced doom. Technical criticism formed another part of Schumacher's argument against Hamilton. The British driver had always preferred stable, single-seaters with good rear-end stability, according to Schumacher, And this becomes particularly relevant when examining the $22,000 regulations. Perhaps his most cutting observation targeted Hamilton's approach to modern Formula One preparation, with Schumacher suggesting that the simulator must be an absolute nightmare for Hamilton, because he doesn't use it at all. And that approach simply isn't how modern Formula One works. Schumacher wasn't alone in this chorus of criticism. And a comment that seemed to really get under Hamilton's skin came from Nico Rosberg. The former Mercedes teammate and bitter 2016 title rival delivered his assessment on Sky Sports F1 on December 6th, just one day before Hamilton's defiant response. Rosberg described the season as terrible for Hamilton, and not a worthy way to end his career. The specifics he listed included being beaten by his teammate, struggling to reach Q2 most of the time, and spinning on his own during sessions. His conclusion was blunt, stating that it doesn't get worse than that and calling the whole situation a real nightmare. What came next stung the most. Rosberg acknowledged Hamilton as the greatest driver ever, adding that nobody would debate that anymore, but then said the struggles were putting a little scratch on Hamilton's legacy.